Every Friday for 9 months, my wife kissed me on the cheek and told me she was going to check on her mother. Her mother called the house one Friday at 7:42 in the evening looking for her. I said she just left. I hung up. Then I stood in my kitchen and watched the microwave clock for 4 minutes and 40 seconds without moving once. That is where the story begins. Welcome back to True Revenge Stories. My name is Franklin Delroy. I am 59 years old. I have spent 27 years as a telecommunications network manager for a regional carrier out of Sudbury, Ontario. I manage infrastructure that moves data across northern Ontario without most people ever thinking about how it gets there, which is exactly how I prefer it. My wife Renata has always said I am the most boring, exciting person she has ever met. And she said it like a compliment, which I chose to take as one. Before I tell you what I did next, tell me where you are watching this from. I would genuinely love to know. We had been married for 24 years. We had a house near Ramsey Lake. I grilled on weekends. I drove a sensible sedan. We had standing Sunday dinners with our son Marcus and his girlfriend. Life was not glamorous, but it was ours. And I thought we both understood what that was worth. Renata was warm and social and funny at parties in a way I never quite managed. She made friends efficiently and kept them well. When her mother Gloria started having health problems 2 years back, Renata took it seriously, and I respected that completely. I never once questioned the Friday visits. I drove her sometimes when it was icy. I sent Gloria soup once in February because the roads were bad and Renata said she could not make it. Gloria sent me back a thank you card in an envelope addressed in the most astonishing handwriting I have ever seen. 91 years old, and she still wrote better than most of my colleagues. I kept the card on the fridge. Looking back, there were things I noticed without properly registering them. Renata started keeping her phone face down on the counter when she was home. She had always left its screen up before. She started showering immediately when she came home on Fridays, which she had not done before. She started coming home later each week, and each time there was a good explanation about Gloria needing her just a little longer. I believed every single one. I run diagnostic checks on network towers for a living, and I did not run a single diagnostic check on my own marriage. I have thought about that more than I would like to. She got a new perfume in March. I told her it was nice. She said it was something Gloria had given her. She came home on a Friday in May smelling of it, and I made her tea and asked how her mother was, and she said tired, but holding on. I nodded. I washed the mugs. That was a Friday in May, and I did not know anything yet. Then came the Friday in June when Gloria called at 7:42 in the evening, asking in her careful, lovely voice if Renata had perhaps stopped somewhere because she was expecting her an hour ago. I paused for exactly 1 second. I said she left here a little while ago. Gloria, she is probably stuck in traffic on Paris Street. You know how it gets on Fridays. Gloria said, yes, of course, and thanked me and hung up. I stood in the kitchen for 4 minutes and 40 seconds. I was not panicking. I was processing data, which is what I do for a living. And the data was telling me something had gone very wrong with a system I had trusted completely. I did not call Renata. I did not pace or raise my voice to an empty room. I went to the garage and sat with my thoughts for a moment. I had a small magnetic GPS tracker on the second shelf, the kind network crews use for fleet monitoring. I had owned it for 3 years and never thought to use it this way. I drove to the parking lot where Renata visited her mother and confirmed the car was not there. Then I drove home and installed the tracker under the rear bumper and went inside and watched the news and went to bed at my normal time. I called my best friend Terrence the next morning. Terrence and I have known each other since 1999. We met on a job site in Timance during a particularly cold January and have been each other's first call for everything ever since. He answered on the second ring. I said, Terrence, I need to talk to you about something. He said, are you sick? I said, no. He said, is Renata sick? I said, I do not know what Renata is right now. There was a long pause. He said, come over. I drove to his place on Lauren Street and sat at his kitchen table and told him everything. The call from Gloria, the tracker, 9 months of Fridays. He listened without interrupting, which is rare for Terrence, because he is a man with opinions, and he shares them with the enthusiasm of someone who has been saving them up for exactly this moment. When I finished, he was quiet for a while. He said, "Franklin, you are the most careful person I have ever known." I said, "Thank you." He said, "That was not entirely a compliment." He told me whatever the tracker showed, I needed documentation before doing anything. Real documentation, not just a gut feeling and a screenshot. He was right. He usually is, even when it takes me a moment to admit it. I pulled up the GPS log from the previous Friday. The car had been at an address on Mackenzie Street from 6:15 in the evening until 11:20. I wrote the address on a piece of paper and put it in my desk drawer and went back to my normal week. The following Friday, Renata kissed me and said she was going to check on Gloria, and I told her to drive safe and to say hello. She left at 5:50. By 6:12, the tracker showed her at the exact same address on Mackenzie Street. I checked at 9 o'clock, still there. I checked at 11 o'clock. She had left at 10:47. 2 Fridays in a row, same location, same pattern, 9 months of the same story, and I had 2 weeks of documented proof pointing somewhere else entirely. I called a lawyer on Monday morning. Her name is Diane Okafor, referred to me by a colleague who described her as relentlessly organized, which is my highest compliment for anyone. I drove to her office on Elm Street and laid out every piece of information I had, the GPS logs printed and labeled by date. The phone records from our shared family plan showing months of extended calls to a number I did not recognize. The printout of Gloria's call from the June Friday. Diane listened with the expression of a woman who has seen this situation before and already knows how it ends. She said, "Mr. Delacroix, this is very thorough." I said, "I work in data." She said, "I can see that." She did not smile when she said it, but I got the impression she wanted to, which I decided was close enough. If you have made it this far, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you genuinely. Diane filed the divorce petition on a Tuesday in late July. She included a detailed submission documenting 9 months of the cover story, GPS records from 2 consecutive Fridays, phone records from the shared family plan, and the precise timeline established by Gloria's June call. She told me not to tip my hand before the papers were served. I went home and Renata made pasta and asked about my day, and I talked about a network outage near Elliott Lake, and that was Tuesday evening in late July. The papers were served on a Wednesday morning. I was not home when it happened. Diane had advised that. I drove to Terrence's place and sat in his backyard while the process server went to our house on Ramsey Lake. Terrence brought coffee. We watched 2 squirrels have what appeared to be a very serious disagreement about a bird feeder. I appreciated the distraction. Renata called 40 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. She said she could explain. She said it was not what it looked like. I sat with that for a moment and then I called Diane instead. The proceedings took 4 months because the documentation established a sustained and deliberate pattern of deception, and because our shared assets included the Ramsey Lake house, 2 investment accounts, and a pension I had been building for 27 years. The court weighed the conduct record carefully in the settlement. Renata received significantly less than she had anticipated. Diane told me afterward that the GPS logs had been particularly persuasive. I thanked her. She said she wished all her clients were as organized as me. I told her I would pass that compliment along to the fleet monitoring industry. Marcus called the night the settlement was finalized. We sat on the phone for an hour and mostly talked about nothing, which was exactly what I needed. At the end he said, "Dad, are you okay?" I said, "I think I am getting there." He said, "Come for dinner on Sunday." I said, "I would bring the wine." He said, "Please do not bring the wine you always bring." I said, "I was going to bring the exact wine I always bring." He laughed. It was a good sound. If you have made it this far, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you genuinely. Terrence came over this Saturday after the settlement. He brought a rotisserie chicken and 2 kinds of potato salad because he does not believe in having just one kind of potato salad. and I have always respected that about him enormously. We sat at the kitchen table and ate, and I looked out at the backyard and thought about the 24 years of a life that had been real even when parts of it were not. Terrence said, "So what now?" I said, "I am going to repaint the back porch." He said, "That is not what I meant." I said, "I know, but the porch genuinely needs it. I have been putting it off for 2 years." He looked out the window at the porch. He said, "The porch does need it." I said, "I know." He said, "What color?" I said, "I was thinking gray." He said, "Franklin, every color you have ever chosen for anything in your entire life has been gray." I said, "It is a good color." He reached for more potato salad and said he could not argue with that. We stayed at the table until the sun had moved past the yard and the lake had gone that particular dark blue. It turns in early September evenings. I thought about the phone call from Gloria that had started all of it. Her careful voice, her not knowing what she was setting in motion. I sent her flowers the following Monday with a card that said simply, "I hope you are feeling well." She sent me back a note in that extraordinary handwriting. It said, "Thank you, Franklin. You have always been a good man." I have the note on my desk. I look at it sometimes.